So if you don't want to be on the recording, you can turn off your camera, no big deal. You can ask questions in the chat. I'm pretty good about seeing the chat, but I'm also really focused on this plan that I have for everybody, and I don't know what people need. But what I'd like to do is start out with introductions, who you are, where you're from, and maybe your experience with the Postcard Fest or a Postcard Fest question that beguiles you. Um, Last year, there were 608 people in 8 different countries doing the Postcard Fest, which was fantastic. It was a record, and we always hope to get close to that. But more importantly, we hope that people have a very good Poetry Postcard Fest experience. That from the Postcard Fest, you learn to trust your first impulse. I will tell you a little story. My oldest daughter, Rebecca, and I used to write these duo Exquisite Corpses. Exquisite Corpses, a surrealist parlor game where the way we were doing it is you had these pieces of paper that were this big, like a regular 8.5 by 11, cut into 4 quadrants. And we'd each start a poem and then maybe one or two words on the next line and fold it over so you couldn't see how the person started. You just saw that last word or two, and then you'd fill that line and a word or two short ones and fold it over, and you'd go back and forth. You'd each start one. So you were not waiting. You were always writing something. And we would do this waiting for a train or trying to kill time. And she majored in journalism at Northwestern, went to the Medill School of Journalism. And when she got out of school, the chair of the journalism department said, Rebecca, you got a job in DC. Are you writing? And she said, no. And he said, Rebecca, you have to write. Many people have to work on their stuff. It just comes out of your head well written, is what he said to her. And I'm taking at least 50% of the credit for that because of all the experience we had doing Exquisite Corpses and just letting it rip. And so I think it's good training, not only for your poetry to trust that impulse, but also in life because we're improvising all of the time, especially in traffic. Do you ever think about that when you're walking, you're improvising? Which way do we go today? We go whichever way Google sends us. No, you're walking, hey, got to cross the street because there's someone menacing looking. They often do that to me. They cross the street when they see me coming. I'm like, I'm not menacing. I'm a regular guy. Anyway, that's why we call one of the workshops Poetics as Cosmology, because when you begin to trust that intuition, it manifests in other aspects of your life. So that's the basic spiel. And I'll go through some other things and hopefully a writing program today. But what I'd like to do is have everybody just say who they are, where they're from, and something about the Postcard Fest. Maybe there's a question, maybe there's a comment, maybe there's a potential blurb, but we're going to go in this order: Christy and Kat and Sally, and then we'll figure out where we go from there. Christy Iverson, your turn.
Hello, I'm from Bismarck, North Dakota, and I have done two Poetry Fest. Um, and I just absolutely love it because I have a really bad self-critic, and and somehow when I feel like I'm sending a card off to a stranger that I will probably never ever meet in my life, it's just really freeing.
There you go. That's a good blurb right there. Hi, Kat. Kat, I can't hear you.
My headphones. My cat may have chewed on them. Um, my name's Kat, and I live in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. So it's going on 9 o'clock here. Um, and I think this is my fifth Postcard Poetry Fest. And so yeah, started in 2020 when I heard about it randomly online. And I love just putting, my subconscious into every poem, just like you were saying, Paul, just letting it rip, whatever comes to mind, just grab an image, grab a topic, put them together, and voila.
Fantastic. That's exactly it. I think you might have seen the Rattle article or the interview that Rattle did with me that summer, maybe. That was around that time, I
I
think.
don't think I was reading Rattle back then. I am now, but I think I may have seen it on Submittable or somewhere, maybe one of the other writer newsletters that I get.
Fantastic. Welcome, Cat. Sorry about your cat. We have a rabbit that's chewed through a few, well, the previous rabbit chewed through my Mac cord. I think we got one replaced. I think they give you one break, or they did anyway at that time. So we're going to go Sally, Diana, Jan, and Joanne in that order, and we're going to let Lou in. Hi, Sally.
Hey there. Yeah, better weather here today in the Seattle area, at least for someone who's a Northwest native. So feels good to have it a little cooler. I think it was Redmond, the Poets in the Park, around 2018 that I went there with a whole bunch of poets and lots of workshops, and happened upon one on the Poetry Postcard Fest. So that's what I've been doing in the summer. And yeah, I kind of like trying out a little bit of collage. So looking forward to collaging art and yeah, being a little bit more free with what I write.
And you are on the Poetry Postcard Fest committee, so you help make the fest go.
I do. Yes, I am. Thank you.
All right, Diana, Jan, and Joanne.
Okay, I think came on when Sally did in 2018. I was in the process that we were selling our Seattle house and getting ready to move to San Clemente. And so everything was disarray, and I was like, how the hell am I going to continue to try to do any writing outside of my notebook and the poetry postcard thing came along, and I thought, well, I could have a little box of stuff and put a bunch of clippings in it. So I do collage with clippings and whatever, all found stuff. And it turned out to be a very nice little thing to focus on at a time when things were in chaos. And then I really liked it. And I was surprised. I wound up loving the collage part as much as I liked the writing. But last year, I felt like I started to get stale and was winding up putting all this energy into the collage. And then I'd wind up describing the collage, and it was like, okay, no more of that. So this year, I think I'm going to try to make it a little more of a ritual. And as Sally said, try to free it up more and not. So it felt like it became this thing where the poem then became the last thing I did before I got it in the mail, instead of the poem being the centerpiece, or at least equal to the collage.
Fantastic. Fantastic. I have gotten into the habit of writing the poem and then creating the image after. And sometimes that can be sort of a reverse ekphrastic poem, right? Where the art in some way reflects on the poem, so kind of opposite of what ekphrastic is. And I've had some pretty good results with that. I think the first one was when John Prine died. I'm like, I got to write a John Prine poem. So I wrote the poem, and I thought, you know what? I can find an image online and cut it out, format it, glue it to the card, and I was off and running. It was a sort of a key moment for me in the Postcard Fest. Thanks, Diana. Jan, are you ready?
Yeah. Hi, I'm Jan. I first heard about it a couple of years ago from Subud, and I think this is going to be my third year. So the first year I did it, I'm a little OCD, and so I was really nervous about doing it and making sure I got the cards out on time, and so I was trying to do some early, and I don't know, for some reason, I think my poems are very lowbrow. I end up doing a lot of traditional, rhyming poems that are very funny, and they crack me up, so I hope other people enjoy them. And what I like is, the first half of them, you send it out and you don't get anything back for a while. And then you get some people answering you, and you answer some people by the end. I think that's really cool. And then I see a lot of like really deep stuff coming back, that doesn't have a lot of words. I tend to use up the whole postcard. So the second year I was, this will be my third year. The second year I was less intimidated by it all. And I tried playing around a little with some non-rhyming verse, but I couldn't stop myself from making jokes. So I just enjoyed the process, and I try to, look at the pictures. I try to get postcards that have not creative enough to make my own, but I try to buy some that have interesting pictures of, artwork or nature, and then, write about the topic there, or I look at somebody's street address. I notice there's so many people from Seattle. Us East Coast people feel a little, underrepresented. But I really enjoy it. And, every year I say, should I do it again? Because it's a big effort and you have to do it. But I love it. It's really fun and I appreciate it. The only thing is when you send the emails about the little notes that you send from the Postcard Fest, I'm always looking to see some actual poems on them. And I very rarely see poems on them. And I think it would be nice if you sent a few poems with some of them.
We're starting to do that. Veronica's adding those to the Postcard Fest list. I've seen a few in the last couple of weeks that she has been gathering, so we're getting better about that. Do you write a lot about Nantucket, Jen? Nantucket?
No, because no, no, I live in New York
You
City,
brought
but
that up on purpose.
I'm
Well,
from,
she writes rhyming poems, and I figured that's a good
no,
guess. You know?
I'm actually from Boston. I've lived in New York 50 years, but I still park my car. And we just bought a second home in Connecticut. So I usually writing in Connecticut. And yeah, I love it.
And what's your Subud connection?
New York Subud, and I was opened. Oh, it must be 6 or 7 years ago when Lucas was still around. Lucas Palladian was still around.
Before he moved to Colorado.
Yeah.
Yeah. Fantastic. Do you find writing spontaneously has similarities with Latihan Kejuan?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when I was first doing it, I was crossing. It was very hard because I'm used to writing drafts and then doing it, but I really took to heart what you said. So there was a lot of scribbling and crossing out. Now there's very little of that. It just comes out. And that's, I guess, Latihan definitely helps with that. That's for sure.
Fantastic. That's fantastic. In Latihan, it's a spontaneous exercise. A spiritual exercise is the translation from the Indonesian. And it's about, you don't even think, what should I do with my hands? You just maybe start going like this. And then you realize later, oh yeah, I'm at the keyboard so often my wrists are stiff. So that's why I do that. So you don't think about it. You just do it. And,
Right.
what did Bapak, who founded Subud, said, experience first, explanations after.
Yeah, kind of have no mind. That's the way to be. Just be
Exactly.
present.
Exactly. Thanks, Jan. I'm glad you're here. Joanne, Tim, and Rebecca are next. Joanne, welcome.
Hello, I'm Joanne, and I live in Colorado, in Boulder County, not far from downtown Boulder and the university. But I was born, raised, and left my heart in New York City. So I appreciate the emphasis that I often hear from you on poetry of place. I'm like a confused soul who's in the wrong place at the wrong time. So I have a hard time with that. I've been in Colorado off and on for 20 years, but it isn't my home. So I have a dog, and we take a walk every morning around a pond where there's many birds, very old cottonwood trees, and a lot of people walking their dogs. And that's where I get my inspiration for the morning poem, for the postcard poem. And I'm still trying to trust myself with the first thought and first writing, but I haven't gotten there yet. I still write it on a piece of scrap paper, edit a little, and then put it on the card. So I'm trying. And this will be my 4th year
Do you
of
know
it.
the Merlin app?
No. Oh yeah, sure. The bird. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, birds
Yeah.
recognizes bird sounds.
Yeah.
I think that could potentially be a great source of inspiration, because they're the luminous details.
Right.
Instead of saying a small bird that has a pretty song or whatever, you're
Right.
talking the scarlet tanager or the song sparrow or whatever.
Yeah.
And what happened to me the other day was I captured the sound of the song sparrow,
Hmm.
and they have it like a digital version of that. And I'm thinking, what a great image that
Yeah.
would be. I tried to get the red line in the middle out, but I'm not good enough at the Adobe products to be able to do that. I'm sure Roberta could do it for me. But I thought, there's the beginning of a song sparrow poem, and that's been incubating. I think one of the things about the Postcard Fest is that these things kind of incubate. And then when you have the fest and you're in the middle of it, it's like, oh, well, I got to get rocking. So I've got an impulse to try that. And some experiments work better than others, but at least you're keeping your hand in it. Thanks, Joanne. I'm glad you're here.
Thank you.
All right. Postcard legend, Tim Mateer, Austin, Texas. Welcome. Please unmute and talk to us.
There we go. Hey, Tim in Austin. We've been blessed with rain. We had more rain in May than we had. We beat our average rain in May for the first time in 7 years. So we've had that blessing, and it's not roasting hot yet. So it looks like 13 years. The last four, I've done two groups. I do one as myself. I try to get in early, and then I come in late and do another as it's simply Rancho now, Paul. Simply Rancho. Uh, but I used to be Rancho Chaotic. I love to make the collage cards. I'm already in production of the cards for the fest. The thing I discovered when I was going back to the history is I am often on the road for a part of the fest, traveling for family vacations and reunions and things like that. So the idea of poems of place are shifting. Sometimes they come from where I grew up or where I'm vacationing, and that's always an interesting thing. Like I said previously, I did a bunch of cards from the Poet's Table, which is a mile climb into the Black Hills of South Dakota, and people have been writing there since the late 1960s. There's been a table and a little box to collect journals, and people go and just fill in the journals. Uh, One of the things I wanted to remind people of is that each of these poems is individual, and it only goes to one person. And that really takes the pressure off me. It's like, no, it's a gift for a single human being that may turn into something later if I go back to dig into it and expand it. But in that moment, it's a gift just for that one person. Yeah, there you go.
Fantastic, Tim. Thanks for being a postcard poet. You inspire me.
The I'm loving it.
Tim was part of the postcards from here that we did last year, and we had an event in the Olympic Sculpture Park in association with the Seattle Art Museum. Beautiful views of Puget Sound and the Olympics right there on the waterfront with an Alexander Calder and other world-class sculptures, and just having a table where people can come by and glue some weird stuff onto a postcard, make their own collages, and then came back and was part of postcards from Mapes Creek, which we did by our little creek here. And it was another hot day. That's why we moved it from July to June, and then we got hit with a 90-degree June day. So that's just our luck. But we miss you, Tim. Hope that you come back.
Thank you. I'd love to come back. I do want to throw out, I forgot, the idea of the relationships that develop and the bonus cards. Joyfully, right now, Abaya and Colette and I are doing an exchange between the three of us where we pass cards around and we each do 1/3 of the card. Um, and play with ideas like that, and that completely comes out. That relationship is uh, it's a deep correspondence that I'm having, and I feel like I have it with you too, Paul. We exchange cards outside the fest, and then there's an idea of bonus cards in the fest. Once you've developed those relationships, you start exchanging cards with other people, even though they're not on your list.
Fantastic. I love that you brought up this, sort of South Dakota early life and Texas later life. And that reminds me of what Joanne said about this tension between New York and Colorado. And, tension is a source for poetry. It's like, what's the difference between New York City and Boulder, Colorado? I go through that all the time, the difference between Chicago and Seattle, because I grew up in Chicago. I've lived in Seattle since 1988. So, and driving is probably near the top, near the top of that list. And driving like a Chicagoan in Seattle probably doesn't make me a whole lot of friends, but you can take the boy out of Chicago. So the tension that's there can come up, can be a theme for you. It can be the source of many poems. And I would encourage you all to mine that if you can see that in your own situation. Do I have my notes here? Yeah, tension. Okay. So Rebecca, Michelle, Scott, Lou, and Leszek.
Yeah, hi.
Hi, I'm in San Francisco, but I am from Boston, so I also have a great deal of experience parking my car. And actually spend a fair amount of time in Boston during the summer with my relatives. So a lot of my postcards. I travel with my postcard kit, which for me, I haven't done collage. I seem to have like an endless supply of cards from a lifetime and my husband's lifetime of travel and visiting museums. And so I select maybe 40 of them and put them in a manila envelope and then pick at random. And sometimes I'm like, can't do it. That one's just not going to work. But I tend to do little ekphrasis as my sort of go-to in some way. I mean, my poems are somehow most of the time sparked by the card, and when they're not, sparked by something in the day. So this is my 4th year, and I'm looking forward to it.
How'd you find out about it?
I was trying to remember. I think it's possible that it might have been Poetry Near You on the Poetry Foundation website that lists local poetry events. Is that possible?
It is.
I think that's where it was.
I think Megan Durham a couple of years ago sent out a press release to all kinds of places, and that spurred a lot of interest. And she's helping us out again this year, so we're excited about that. Quickly, your postcard kit, besides the postcards collected from exiting through many, many gift shops?
Yeah. It's just a manila envelope with my postcards, my list, and my stamps. And then the one thing I would add is that I tend to write with a fountain pen, and a lot of postcards are too glossy for fountain pen ink. So I've kind of gone through at the beginning, I experiment or I travel with a bunch of different pens. I sometimes have to do Scotch tape over my poem after I realize that it's going to smudge. So that's kind of part of my kit also, is the ink struggle.
I'm looking for the watercolor. Here they go. Now these don't have images on them, but man, do they take in
Right.
the ink or the whatever. They're blanks, and on the back it's you got your standard postcard
Yep.
thing. But these are great for writing with pens and watercolor postcards. That particular brand too. What is Strathmore?
Yeah.
That sounds like a Massachusetts entity right there, I think. So yeah, that's I recommend those ones. Where do they go? Where do I put them? Well, just stick them right here for now. Postcard kits. Oh, and stamps. That's a whole nother level. And I sometimes just use letter stamps on postcards. Sometimes it's necessary because you have a bigger size. postcard. Sometimes it's going out of the country and you have to put an international stamp. Sometimes it's irregularly shaped and you need the butterfly stamp. Do you know about that, people? The butterfly stamp? What does it say on the bottom of the butterfly stamp, Tim, for non-machinable cards? Yeah, I think that's what it is. And when you start getting into the stamp thing, it's just another sort of rabbit hole to get into. But I have my kit. I showed this earlier, this box here, and the stamps. I'm just excited about that. I never thought I'd be a stamp nerd, but here we go. Here we go. Just to give you an example, have you seen the Hank Aaron stamps? Holy cow, Hammer and Hank. I love it. You notice I haven't used too many of them there. I can't use these to send anywhere unless I'm in Canada, but I got Canadian stamps. When I'm there, I'm like, what the hell? I'm mailing something. I might as well buy some stamps. Alan Toussaint. Come on. Are you kidding me? You could write an Alan Toussaint poem. Here are the butterfly stamps I was talking about. And it says, God, is a tiny font. I can't even read it. Machinable, non-machinable, surcharged is what it says. Another butterfly, otters for you people in Santa Cruz. Lunar New Year, the year of the snake. My wife's a snake, and all kinds of things. And then, of course, oh wait, Japanese soldiers. I only got a couple of those left. Oh, and these ones. Do you remember these? The Haida Raven stamps?
Oh,
Holy shit, those are beauties. I love those. Yogi Berra. Okay, well, I've gone on too long about the stamps, but being a stamp nerd is cool. And what's his name? Walter Lowe. He puts antique stamps on his, and you get these stamps, and he puts 4 or 5 on them. I think that's another dimension that you can go into. Okay, big stamp sidebar. Michelle, Scott, Lou, and then Leszek in that order. Michelle, hello.
Hi. I just love the Postcard Fest. I've been doing it since 2014, and I think I learned about it from the Boynton blog, which is a blog that comes based out of Bellingham. And everything that everyone has said, I have done: ekphrastic, reverse ekphrastic, old stamps, new stamps. When I was a kid, I was so into being a pen pal. I had sealing wax and I made envelopes out of magazine pictures and just all of it. And in terms of the poems, I just am so much more relaxed than when I first started. The first year I did it, they were all grief poems because my partner was dying. And then other years they were silly limericks or rhyming poems, or who knows what's going to happen each time. And I've done collages or photographs that I've turned into postcards. And I also have a huge collection of postcards because they just seem to come my way. So that's kind of me. And this started my whole kind of path of being interested in doing poetry again. And I read for the first time last night some of my haiku poems at a reading. So and a couple of poems that I did as postcard poems are now in anthologies. And so you just never know where it's going to go. So other people are what I like to think of like we do in yoga practice. The benefit of the practice is reaching others. And it's, although I haven't been able to convince any of my friends to join this, even with all of my enthusiasm, I still keep pitching the idea because I really like it. So,
Where do you live?
I live in Bellingham, Washington.
And so Judy Kleinberg's blog is what.
Yes, that's the one where I first learned about it in 2014.
And
Yeah.
Judy's also on the Postcard Fest committee, and she was a co-editor of the poetry postcard anthology called 56 Days of August. I wonder if I probably have a copy back here. Here it is. 56 Days of August. We used to put the fest registration out on July 4th get people their lists on the 5th. They start writing on the 6th, and it was 56 days of August. That's how we got that name. If you're going to extend any month of the year, August seems to me to be a pretty good one to extend, where we don't have to be so Protestant about things and we can dedicate a little more time to poetry. That Protestant work ethic is what I'm talking about. To be able to suspend that for 1 month. And the month is August and it's 56 days long. Thanks, Michelle. Oh, one last question. When you were dealing with grief, how did you find the Postcard Fest? Did it help you in any way come to terms? Was it cathartic in that way?
Oh, yes. I didn't set out to write, 31 grief poems, but they ended up helping me so much when I could see the poems. And I thought, well, I kind of felt sorry for whoever was getting my poems. But then grief is, it's something that we all experience. So in the long run, I felt like I didn't really have any control. I released it out into the world, into the person that received it. And I just hope that whatever it was going to do, it did as a gift for that person.
Amen. When you were talking about that, I was reminded of my own experience where where I was going through a health issue and came through it fine. And she said, "I don't know who wants to read a poem about your prostate cancer." She said,
I know, right? Yeah.
my sister, I think Diana, you met her, and she's got that wicked, dark Chicago sense of humor. She gave me a shirt one time that said, "Chicago, where the weak are killed and eaten." That's her sense of humor. And one other thing, really funny thing, she said when I had another health issue. I had a couple of episodes of gout, and she said, "Gout? That's a rich man's disease." She said, with that strong Chicago accent, which you can turn on and off like I do. Like we've heard the Boston accent, you can kind of turn it on and off. I suspect when you go there, it kind of turns on by itself, or if you have a drink that sometimes can activate that. Sometimes they get stuck in the Chicago accent, and people don't like it.
Yeah, I've got a fakey Irish one too, but oh well.
I'm glad you're here, Michelle.
Thanks.
So we said Scott, Lou, Leszek, and I think then we're all in, yeah?
Yeah. My screen says Scott because that's my husband and the system's under his name. I don't know how to change that, but I'm Mary Jane. So my name is Mary Jane. And I live in Southern California, but originally from New Jersey. So I'm also have that East Coast in me. And last summer, and we were in New Jersey in August at the beach, and I wrote several poems. I just typed them into my phone. I didn't have anything with me on the beach. We were just walking around, but I typed them all into my phone, and then I went back and put them on the postcard. So last year was my first year doing it, and I really loved it. And I even made I printed out a blank map of the United States, and then it had Canada, and I had one card from England, and I literally mapped out where the cards were coming from and where I was sending them to. And I looked up the towns that people were from. One person was from Northern California with a population of like 18 people in the town. I never heard of it before. So I really just enjoyed it all. And I did get nervous to just write right on the postcard. I admit that. But a lot of them were my first draft, but I still wrote it on paper and then made sure I could fit it neatly on the postcard. So, and I was really impressed with how people were very artistic on the front of the postcard. So I want to try to do a little bit of that this year. And as far as Michelle, you're mentioning the grief, I think it's fine. I got some poems that were really very touching, and I thought, wow, this person really captured something. It didn't make me feel sad. I didn't know the situation. I just appreciated them sharing. So, and I actually sent some sad ones out myself. So anyway, so thank you. This is great seeing faces and names. Oh, you were able to fix that. Thank you.
Hey, Mary Jane,
Yes,
where are you again in Southern California?
Southern California,
Where?
Laverne,
Laverne.
35 miles east of Los Angeles, and
Okay,
all
I'm in San
problems.
Clemente. I'm in San
Oh, okay.
Clemente.
We were just in San Clemente, May 23rd, 24th. Yeah,
We
we
can
were
stop
right
by.
there. Yeah, we were right there on the beach. Yeah, so I'm hoping they'll get that train going through down to San Diego again, because we like going down there. Yeah, and another happy thing that came out of this is one of the people, it was from Riverside on my list, which is not real far from where I live. And there's a group of people that meet once a month, and she invited me to come to their poetry group through this festival. That's how she first got to know me. So now I meet with them once a month. So it's really turned out well.
That's fantastic.
So thank you.
Open some doors. Thanks, Mary Jane.
Yes, thank you very much. Thanks for fixing my name.
Part of my skill set.
Yeah.
The cards you get and you think, damn, this is good. I got to
Mhm.
try that. Whether it be a language thing or whether it be a collage thing, or, maybe you get started by taking, I like to call them store-bought cards, and
Mhm.
just maybe putting some ink stamps. Like I did that, and I didn't capture the image. For some reason, I didn't scan it. I usually scan everything I send out, but I had postcards of Robinson Jeffers when I visited Tor House many years ago in my postcard stash. And I thought, yeah, Robinson Jeffers card. And I took my ink stamp of a feather. I think I have it. It might have been this one, or it looked like that. And I put him like three on his head, like he were a chief or something like that. And I looked at it, I'm like, that is cool. I wish I would have scanned that. I didn't, but there's the idea to take. And I think we've had postcard blog posts in the past about someone who would take the postcards they bought in a store and just kind of alter them a little bit. And you see these videos on Instagram or whatever, people getting, a dollar painting in the Goodwill and then adding tanks to it or something like that, making it look strange or bringing that surreal element into it. And yeah, that's something worth trying. Get your feet wet in the image department. Thanks, Mary Jane.
Right.
Lou Nelson from the Nelson clan.
Yeah, we're not a relation as far as I know. I'm in Quebec, Canada, southern Quebec, very close to the Vermont border. I still cross the border into the US. Despite what's happening at the upper levels, I feel a strong connection to Vermont and have good relationships with people there. So, and if you ever want to come north, we'll be happy to have you. This is the second year, I think. I'm pretty sure I did do the summer poetry project 2 years ago. For several years now, I've been doing the February Peace Postcard Project with C.J. Prince and Carla Schaefer in Bellingham, basically, Washington. And that's been a great connection. I'm new again to poetry after not doing it for decades. Started up again with the postcard projects, and I still find that's my greatest comfort zone currently with poetry, is doing something short that'll fit on a postcard. In the past I've made all my postcards, which I really, really liked, but it's very time consuming. And in the along the way, I have inherited postcards from my grandmother who traveled and from my mother who traveled. And I got, for some reason, out of the kids in my family, I got those postcards. So this year I'm going to work with those postcards and focus more on the writing than on the making of the postcards. In the past, my poems were often very directly inspired by whatever image I made on the postcard, which I really thought, not being very experienced in poetry, was sort of cheating until I learned the word ekphrastic. And then, but ekphrastic doesn't exactly capture the idea of making an image yourself and then doing a poem from it, in my opinion. But anyway, I felt more comfortable with it once I learned about that process. So that's me.
Last time I crossed into Canada, I told the border guard that I just want you to know that I respect the sovereignty of your country. And
Thank you.
I think it takes an extraordinary skill, not one that I would seek to cultivate, to be able to piss off Canadians. I mean, come on.
That's what they say, you know, it's really bad if the Canadians get mad.
Exactly. What do you have to do to fuck up on that level? I'll just say it that like, I mean, just please keep us in your thoughts. It's a difficult time. But you know, if you look up the history of fascism and authoritarianism, there's usually not a happy ending. So hopefully not too many people are taken out with it. Already innocent people, Mahmoud Khalil, Kilmar Abrego Garcia is still incarcerated and shouldn't be. He will get his time in court. The prosecutor resigned in Tennessee when he read what they were charging him with. So, and the head of one of the head generals in the country directly denied the questions that were related to Trump's escalation of the situation in Los Angeles. It was in the Washington Post today. One of the chiefs of staff, the head guy, Trump's handpicked guy, denied that it was an appropriate response. So I'm optimistic that cooler heads will prevail. But as someone who runs a thing called the Cascadia Poetics Lab, I'm kind of looking forward to the post-national reality that probably awaits us all. So I have some mixed emotions, but I don't like seeing innocent people getting hurt, and don't like seeing people in Ukraine not being supported. I don't like seeing people in Palestine not being supported, but that's not just a Republican thing. That's a U.S. government thing. So thanks for hanging in with us, Lou. Leszek, we're checking in. We're saying who we are, where we're from, and our experience with the Postcard Fest.
Well, hello everybody. Sorry for being late a little bit. I dozed off. We're still trying to get over the jet lag. We came back from Poland, and before our trip to Poland, via Reykjavik in Berlin, the Brandenburg that often goes on strike, and you get the extra time. You're buying extra time, like in Reykjavik, instead of hour and a half, you all of a sudden got 5 hours on your hands because somebody else is striking somewhere. But that's life. That's fine. If they have to fight for their own rights, and so be it. Okay. So we're coming back from Reykjavik and landing in Seattle at SeaTac. And I'm a little bit anxious to, as you can see, I'm sporting a new U.S. passport, and they didn't even want to see my passport. Okay, so this is strange. I know it looks strange, but all I needed to do was just look into the camera, and then you get one word in red or in rejected or verified in green, and that's all it takes to get into the U.S. So that was a strange experience for me, and I was a little bit disappointed, not to sport my new passport and not to shove it right into his face. I said, no, I don't want to see it, please. So when it comes to postcards, listening to all of you, I realized that, oh, I'm sorry, I go back. So originally I'm from Poland, and I came to the US back in June of what was it, 77? Yeah, June of 77, June 26, 77. And we ended up in Paul's neighborhood, Chicago. And then we went down to Urbana-Champaign, got our degrees I got a degree in library and information science, and jumping around the northern border of the US, ended up some 25 years ago in Seattle, and we are still here. And I've been doing poetry most of my life, mostly in the Polish language, but I also decided to venture into the English language, and that's a lot of fun. Frustration too, but a lot of fun, as you can imagine. And Paul, yes, I can turn on my accent anytime. I even think with an accent. So, yeah.
Have you ever put that into a poem that you think with with an accent?
Uh, you think I have? I just finished, with we're finishing editing my latest collection of poems, The Immigrant Song, with Adelia, and I think there's one poem about it. Yeah,
Fantastic.
yeah.
Leszek, I'm glad you're here.
Yeah, thank you. So I haven't really done anything about the postcards, but it sounds like listening to all of you, this could be fun. So I think I'm gonna give it a shot and see what happens.
I think it's going to cost you extra postage if you mail it from where you are right now.
Mm-hmm. I'm in Seattle.
It looks like you're on Jupiter or something. I can't quite tell.
That's what you're talking about. Yeah, I was trying to send a message about all those yahoos that are going to end up on Mars, because Mars is too dear to us all. So I say keep on going.
Thanks, Leszek. Lou said something about being comfortable with short forms and why the Postcard Fest is perfect for that. And yeah, it's a restriction, a spatial restriction. And a couple of years ago, Adelia alerted me to a poem by Pierre Joris, who he brought to town, who's died since then. And he did a thing called Canto Diurno in the 80s, where he, instead of a spatial restriction, he used a temporal restriction.
Yeah.
And wrote all that he could in one 24-hour period and called it Canto Diurno. And Adelia then did something like that, wrote a poem in a day, and I offered it as a workshop exercise right after the Postcard Fest. So the Postcard Fest ends August 31st, if you're doing it right.
Right.
September 1st, you have 31 prompts or things that you can graft from. Oh, there's an idea that I didn't explore enough. I can write about that. And the idea is that you're exercising your short form muscles in the Postcard
Right.
Fest. Why not exercise the long in the day song? And I've published two as chapbooks, one as a book through Carbonation Press, Day Song Miracle, past 62, written on September 8th, 2024. And I tend to do this day song twice a year, once around Imbolc and once around the end of the Postcard Fest. This year, I believe August 31st falls on a Sunday. And so I'm going to do my day song on August 31st, but it's really become a part of my practice and a part of my life to begin to stretch the long muscles after the short ones. So just some thoughts that came up.
Yeah.
I'd like to share screen for a moment. So the notion of spontaneous composition goes back a long time. And I have a page on my personal website, paulenelson.com/poetics. And I can drop that in the chat, the URL for this. So if you want to look at it at your convenience, paulenelson.com/poetics. And then here's what it says. While the poetics of the Cascadia Poetics Lab have not been systematized, one can get a gist of it with the following essays. This page is a work in progress. There has long been a tradition of received poetry in English and other languages, but critical to our poetics is the notion of, quote, getting rid of the lyrical interference of the individual as ego, as Charles Olson noted in Projective Verse. that also in a few lines later in the essay alludes to humility is critical. Umik E. Richard Atleo of the Nuu-Chah-Nulth tribe also notes that humility is a necessary requirement in his people's knowledge acquisition method known as usumich. Cascadia Poetics Lab Poetics values writing as vision quest, and the day song exercise is one of the most effective approaches we have encountered to achieve that goal. Workshop participants may find it helpful to be familiar with these essays. And if you click on day song exercise, that comes to one of them. Inside the day song, the temporal epic is one such thing. And in fact, I'll drop that link in the chat if you didn't see my path toward it and go back. Did it open up in a new tab? No, it didn't. So these are many essays that come from this stance toward poem making. Some, the angle's a little more oblique. Some, it's very direct, like this Some Notes on Organic Form by Denise Levertov, who lived right down the road here in Seattle for the last 8 years of her life. I bolded this part. A partial definition then of organic poetry might be that it is a method of apperception, i.e. of recognizing what we perceive, and is based on an intuition of an order, a form beyond forms, in which forms partake, and of which man's creative works are analogies, resemblances, natural allegories. Such poetry is exploratory. How does one go about such a poetry? I think it's like this. First, there must be an experience, a sequence or constellation of perceptions of sufficient interest felt by the poet intensely enough to demand of him their equivalence in words. He is brought to speech. Now skip down a bit. The beginning of the fulfillment of this demand is to contemplate, to meditate. Words which connote a state in which the heat of feeling warms the intellect. God, that's beautiful. I love how she said that, which is why I put it in bold. And you could read that, Some Notes on Organic Form. Going back to the notion of how far back in English this quote-unquote received poem goes, we click on Angels to Radios on Rainier Maria Rilke. And this, written by Ange Malenko, appeared in The Nation, December 2009. It is said that the tradition of English poetry began with Caedmon, an illiterate 7th century lay brother who, ashamed of his inability to versify when the harp was passed around at a feast, fell asleep in his stable among the animals and dreamed of an angel. This angel, too, bade him sing, and again Caedmon protested that he did not know any songs. But then, inexplicably, he found himself obeying the angel's dictum, sing the beginning of the creatures. Immediately on waking, he wrote down the eulogy to the world and its maker that had been transmitted to him in his dream. Today, the 9-line Anglo-Saxon Caedmon's Hymn is the earliest known English poem, a product of what poets now often call dictation. And she talks about many different folks, William Butler Yeats, who found the entities that gave him metaphors for his verse, James Merrill on the Ouija board, Jack Spicer, his Orphic radio. We just saw a documentary on Jean Cocteau at the Seattle International Film Festival, which I think is streaming somewhere. I think it is. I'm not totally sure about that. And of course, I didn't ask during the Q&A, the director or somebody from the film was there, but I went up to him after and I said, "Are you aware of Jean Cocteau's influence on the poetics of Jack Spicer?" He said, No, who's Jack Spicer? I said he was part of the Berkeley Renaissance with Robert Duncan. He says, I know Robert Duncan and Robin Blazer, Cascadian poet. And how, if you ever saw Orpheus, the protagonist of the movie is Orpheus, Orphée in French, goes into the car to listen to this broadcast of poems. And he's like, I got to write this shit down. I mean, he didn't say it word for word like that, but that's what he was doing. And Spicer gave Spicer the idea where 7 years later, he's writing it in his own essays. He said, Spicer said, in a lecture given in Vancouver, BC in 1965, and collected in the book, the house that Jack built, which is collected essays of Jack Spicer, the poet is a radio tuned to a station from Mars. So, given in 1965, Jack Spicer. So that's a great essay by Ange Linko. I'll go back to that real quick and see if there's anything else on there that I should talk to you about. The Practice of Outside, Robin Blazer. So a man who was there with Jack Spicer since the 40s, up all the way to Spicer's death. Creativity in the Fully Developed Bard by Ed Sanders. And an essay that somebody was saying in the chat about writing what is happening now in this time. This link to investigative poetry gives you a great idea on how to go about that. It was published by City Lights originally in 1976, and the content of history will be poetry. Techniques of investigative poetry, presenting data on the page is the history, and some observations on the public performances of investigative poets. And I'll do another URL grab and put that in the chat so you don't have to follow my weaving path through this lecture. So lots of stuff to get into here, and we're always adding more. So feel free to bookmark that and make it of use. That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to be of use. Oh, one of those essays on there I did want to talk about. So I'm going to go to screen share again because I think this is really essential. Some of you may know that I'm the literary executor to a poet named Sam Hamill. He founded a thing called Copper Canyon Press, and he also founded this effort called Poets Against the War, which protested actually I should say Dick Cheney's war in Iraq. And there were over 20,000 poems against war in general, for peace in general, but written in the context of the war on Iraq. And Sam has this great essay called Epistolary Poetry. And then again, it's on this poetics page. And I'm going to put these in alphabetical order because they're just too unwieldy now. They look a little like a junk drawer. That's kind of my HTML, my web design technique is like a junk drawer, and probably not the best way. But epistolary poetry, the poem is letter, the letter is poem. Would anyone like to be a volunteer and read a couple of paragraphs?
I'd be happy to.
Fire away. Fire away.
Okay. The poem is letter. The letter is poem. Several years ago in Missoula, at the customary after the reading bash, I was approached by a young grad school poet. I didn't realize that you were a former student of Richard Hugo's, he said. I'm not. But you write letter poems, he declared, and that's an invention of Dick's. With all the specializing and pigeonholing done by scholars, it has always astonished me that no one, to my knowledge, has written on epistolary poetry as a genre. The poem as letter has been with us for nearly as long as we have had written poetry. In the Western tradition, the honor of inventing the genre is generally bestowed upon Quintus Horatius Flaccus, a Latin poet who preceded Hugo by roughly 2,000 years. And ever since Horace, the letter poet has been prominently evident, especially during the 17th and 18th centuries, when English poets were much taken with imitations of the Horatian epistle. In 1804, Wordsworth wrote to a young lady who had been reproached for taking long walks in the country. Do you want me to read that?
Yes.
Okay. Dear child of nature, let them rail. There is a nest in a green dale, a harbor and a hold, where thou, a wife and friend, shalt see thine own heart-stirring days and be a light to you and old. There, healthy as a shepherd boy, and treading among the flowers of joy which at no season fade, thou, while they babes around thee cling, shalt show us how divine a thing a woman may be made. Thy thoughts and feelings shall not die, nor leave thee when gray hairs are nigh, a melancholy slave, but an old age serene and bright, and lovely as a Lapland night, shall lead thee to thy grave.
Isn't that something? You read that so well.
Oh, thank you.
Nice. Do you have experience as a theater or radio person?
No, I have experience as a school principal, as a poet, as a English major. I love reading out loud.
Fantastic.
You
Anyone
did
else?
really well.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, it was great to
Yeah.
listen to you. Does anyone else want to take over? All right, I'll do it. 1,000 years before Wordsworth, the great masters of Tong poetry, Li Bo and Du Fu, were writing copiously in the same genre. Pound has translated Li Bo's The River Merchant's Wife, a letter, and Exile's Letter. Shigeyoshi Obata translated Addressed Humorously to Du Fu with the following footnote. In contrast with Li Bo, who depended largely on inspiration, Du Fu was a painstaking artist careful of the minutest details. The poem is a marvelous example of just why the genre is so universally appealing. Here! Is this you on the top of Fanko Mountain, wearing a huge hat in the noonday sun? How thin, how wretchedly thin you have grown! You must have been suffering from poetry again. Much of the charm of the letter poem lies in its inside information. Without Obata's footnote, we could not possibly gain the insight into the difference between these two poets and their respective approach to craft. And yet, even without the footnote, there is a certain appeal, even at a single reading. The poem as letter allows a privacy of speech and a certain confidentiality of tone that other genres tend to repel. Epistolary poetry may be said to be the first expression of the confessional school, since its tendency is to include and or refer to autobiographical and biographical detail not generally known to the public. However, in order to establish a certain degree of accessibility in the poem, these details must reveal their own significance somehow without the context of the poem. Obata's footnote is unnecessary. Many years later, Du Fu would write a letter poem to Li Bo on a spring day. Bo, the poet unrivaled in fancy's realm, you soar alone. Yours is the delicacy of Yui and Pao's rare virility. Now on the north of the Wei River, I see the trees under the virile sky, while you wander beneath the sunset clouds, far down in Jiangtung. When shall we, by a cask of wine once more, argue minutely on versification? While the reader need not know that Hui Xin and Bao Chao were probably well known during the early Tang, as were Li Bo and his correspondent, it requires little imagination on the part of the reader to sort out the details. Similarly, the last line requires no explication nor exegesis. East or west, the letter poem is a fundamental concern. Shelley's wonderful longish letter to Maria Gisborne, all the romantic poems beginning with to, these form the tradition of the genre on which all the modern and contemporary poets draw. In the Eastern tradition, there is so much epistolary poetry that it seems silly to mention a few of the better known. Li Jingchao, Bo Chui, see Whaley's Po Chui's The Letter, Qin Chia's to his wife, and Qin Chia's wife's reply, and others. And the essay goes on. Well, William Carlos Williams, one of the most beautiful poems in the English language, an apology to his wife. Nobody wants to hear your apology to your spouse. Bullshit, I say. Of asphodel, that greeny flower, like a buttercup upon its branching stem. Save that it's green and wooden, I come, my sweet, to sing to you. And the way it looks on the page is something that Ed Sanders explained to me when you're writing investigative poetry. How you score it on the page is very important, and it communicates something. In the Olson Pound tradition, space equals time, and the line breaks are a score for the reading of the poem. And when you see these indented triadic stanzas, it tends to have this kind of waltz rhythm to it. You can see it there on the page, and it's fantastic. So you may feel free to go back to that particular essay, and if I haven't dropped it in the chat, let me do that. one more time, and we can go from there. Any questions about what we just heard? No? 6:40. I'm feeling an urgency to get to the exercise. I'll just do, well, I'll try and run through these other points that I had. I'm going to do a quick search for this interview that I did with Allen Ginsberg. I had been in radio 14 years. I hadn't done a lot of interviews at that time, so I was a little nervous, and I had a chance to interview Allen Ginsberg for his poem Cosmopolitan Greetings. He was also celebrating the 94, I think it was the 20th anniversary of what they called the Naropa Institute, which is now Naropa University in beautiful Boulder, Colorado, where I will be on Friday with my wife visiting Andrew Schelling. And there it is, Allen Ginsberg, Cosmopolitan Greetings Poems, 1986 to 1992, I think. And June 12, 1994, recorded at the Tacoma Mall office building, Suite 85. Did I hit share sound? I don't think I did. So I'm going to do that again. Share sound, optimize for video sharing, and go there like that. Oops, that's not what I wanted to share. Hold on a second. I wanted to share this. So let me go screen share, Ginsberg, and here. And so here's him talking about this. I've played this many times, and it'll really give you a sense of first thought, best thought. Please give me a thumbs up if you can hear this when I click on this link here. And here's the transcript. Where is the audio? Where is the audio? Is it right here?
First Thought, Best Thought is the title of a book by Chogyam Trungpa, my Tibetan Lama guru. And it came up in the course of a conversation in which we were composing a chain poem together, each of us contributing one line piece. And at some point I said, the monk bent down to lace his animal shoes. And I didn't know what I meant by animal shoes. It just came up out of my head. And he said, animal shoes? And I said, oh yes, the shoes are made of leather, animal shoes. And he said, the first thought is the best thought. Meaning, the first raw flash on your mind that's usually visual, before you mediate it and edit it and editorialize on it and generalize on it or make it okay for other people to look at or censor it or filter it. Yeah. Before you filter it, it usually comes intact as a kind of raw, emotionally interesting gleam, usually visual. So Kerouac has the idea in his instructions for writing, don't stop to think of words but to see picture better, i.e. the first primordial picture that you see. Because what people tend to do is be a little ashamed of their minds or ashamed of their raw thoughts or thinking, well, that's too personal or that's just me. Maybe I should generalize it. Say I'm having a dream in which I'm sleeping with my mother. No, I don't want to write about that. So I'll say, I had a dream in which I did something bad. Or I had a dream in which I outraged society. Or I had a dream in which I don't know. So finally you lose the humor and contradictoriness and quiddity and humanity of the first glimpse that goes back to Oedipus and goes back to Freud or goes back before the Bible. And you lose the detail and you lose the believability, and instead you get some generalization or abstraction. And one very interesting thing that William Blake says is generalization and abstraction are the plea of the hypocrite, knave, and scoundrel.
That says it. And his paraphrase of Blake is better than Blake's original. Generalization and abstraction are the plea of the hypocrite, knave, and scoundrel. And what I've been able to surmise by studying this stance toward poem making, probably since that day that Allen told me that, June 12th, 1994, was that when we don't give people exactly what it is, when we gloss over it or use an abstraction or don't say exactly what it is, we're not going far enough down our own throats to be generous to this person and to be intimate with them and to let them know exactly what's happening. Now, that doesn't mean you have to write postcard poems about prostate cancer necessarily, but to go into your own personal mythology, I think is a real gift to someone, to really tell them how it is, how you're feeling. I think if I got a poem from someone grieving the loss of their spouse, that would really be a beautiful thing, that they entrusted that moment to me. And I think you have to go into these things. You don't have to, but I think the Postcard Fest encourages you to be able to do that, to be able to say, you know what, I'm going to leave a little hunk of my soul on this card. What do I have to lose? Right? So I think that's a very important thing that he said. And it's guided me for many years. Other people do seriality. T. Clear also lives down the road here, about 2 miles. She used the Postcard Fest, and one of her restrictions was that she mentioned the particular phase of the moon at which she started writing in every card that she sent out. So she went through a whole moon cycle and knew it. And that marked, she wouldn't use this phrase, it's a Zen phrase, and I wouldn't have used it at the time either. The Dharma position is something that comes out of Soto Zen. That's such a great phrase, the Dharma position. Anything can happen, but nothing happens twice in our world, right? I can do this poetry workshop again, but there won't be that motorcycle that just went by, or there won't be so much bird shit on my window here as I turn the screen around, or any number of things. This reality, this particular moment is eternal, and it will never happen like this again. So it has a particular stamp. It has a particular Dharma position. Matt Treese, using sun signs and the particular positions of planets, is another way to do that. But to mark things that are in your life, to mark the time that you're writing, the day of the week, these kinds of things, by being specific, I think gets you to that Dharma position. And I love that idea. And then Zach Charles, who's also on the Poetry Postcard Fest committee, he went down to Alki here in West Seattle and was noting on the cards the level of the tide. And he was also doing some extracting from a Kenyan review that he found in one of those little libraries. He took a Kenyan review out and started taking lines out of that with his X-Acto knife or something, and using that as a theme to address his month of cards. He also he made the cards, so he had the actual level of the tide going up and down for each day. So just a couple of things that you can do to flavor that particular year of postcard poems. We give people 56 days, so don't feel like you need to give into pressure to do the poem a day thing that is done in other circumstances. This one, having more time, I think helps. So a couple of other things. We've talked about collage. You can use collage for the image, but you can also use collage for the actual poem. I have on many occasions taught a particular postcard or a particular collage technique. I won't say postcard collage because it's not strictly for that, but it's under this tab workshops. And if you go down this and go to not too far, the Berrigan sonnet collage exercise, an aleatory method. So bringing in chance. He took this sonnet that he wrote, and it went originally like this, but he first let it appear like this. In Joe Brainerd's collage, its white arrow. Wait a minute. No, here it is. In Joe Brainerd's collage, its white arrow does not point to William Carlos Williams. He is not in it, the hungry dead doctor. What is in it is 16 ripped pictures of Marilyn Monroe, her white teeth whitewashed by Joe's throbbing hands. Today, I am truly horribly upset because Marilyn Monroe died. So I went to a matinee B movie and ate King Kong popcorn, he wrote in his diary. The black heart beside the 15 pieces of glass in Joe Brainerd's collage takes the eyes away from the gray words, doctor, but they say I love you, and the sonnet is not dead. And he had this technique where you kept line 1 where it is, but put line 2 on the bottom. Line 3 then went up and became line 2. Line 4 went to just above line 2 in its new position. And it came out like this. In Joe Brainerd's collage, its white arrow, he's He is not in it, the hungry dead doctor of Marilyn Monroe, her white teeth white. I am truly horribly upset because Marilyn and ate King Kong popcorn, he wrote in his Of Glass in Joe Brainerd's collage. Doctor, but they say I love you, and the sonnet is not dead. Takes the eyes away from the great words. Diary. The black heart beside the 15 pieces. Monroe died, so I went to a matinee B movie, washed by Joe's throbbing hands. Today, what is in it is 16 ripped pictures. Does not point to William Carlos Williams. So, you could do that with a postcard poem that you write. You can collage it and send it to the next poem and get 2 for 1 out of the language. But this is and here's my smart-ass comment. Here's Ted Berrigan on the ideal line length. Although I think you need a really large postcard to get it done like that. So where were we? We were back at poetics. And then there was one other thought before I go into the exercise. Oh, typing. Yeah. So I started typing my postcard poems. I get construction paper like this. I rip it into 4 equal hunks, and then I stick it in this here Royal Classic typewriter, and I compose spontaneously. And sometimes the thing skips and there's an extra space in it. And, I think you can fix that later in Adobe PDF by changing it into a certain text. And so you can do some fixing with it. But Ezra Pound essentially invented projective verse while incarcerated in Pisa for his speeches in favor of the fascists in World War II. And Charles Olson wrote about this in projective verse. Now that the poet has a typewriter, he has the tool that musicians have had all this time with the bar, the music, the scored out music. Now the typewriter allows the poet to have that, so we know exactly how the poem is to be read. So I've been typing my poems, and it's been a lot of fun. And that is really a challenge, to be able to type spontaneously. But a lot of these poets do it at the boardwalk or whatever. They have a little thing where they have a typewriter and they'll write you a poem for $5. And that would also be very good practice. And those poets who do that all should do the Postcard Fest. So the last thing I want to do is a little writing exercise. And we're going to start by going back to that epistolary poetry essay. And we're going to ask you to pick a line from this essay. Maybe you can pull it up by yourself. Maybe you see something, or you can ask me to scroll back up. Maybe you take a line from William Carlos Williams of Asphodel, that greeny flower like a buttercup. Maybe you find a poem in your own library and you find a line. But what you do is you write down that line. For instance, let's say we take this poem with its personal, confidential tone, its private reverie, and maybe you start with that and you describe what it is. And you're not describing William Carlos Williams, you're describing the poem that you're writing right there in that moment. So you might want to start with that. You could also do a screen grab, right? Where you take it like that and you have it. So that's what I'd like you to do for we're going to take 6 minutes to write a postcard poem, is to take some line, and you could take it from this essay, or you could take it from some book that you have near, or a famous line that you like, and write a postcard length poem in the time we have left. And if anyone wants to hang out, we can do that and read a couple. This comes from an exercise that I created for my workshop called Mammal Grafting. And I can share that link too if you're interested in it. Michael McClure did a lot of this grafting from his own work. He liked it so much, he thought, let's see where it takes me this time on this experiment in consciousness as the spontaneous poem can be. Are there any questions about this? No one is ever forced to share their work in my workshop. So keep in mind what Allen Ginsberg said. One of his mind writing slogans was, you can write anything you want as long as you don't show anybody. That's the key. So, if you wrote something that was too personal in the Postcard Fest, no one is putting a gun at your head and saying, you have to stamp that and mail it. You can put it in a drawer and write them something else. You know what I mean? So feel free to write anything. And we'll start the clock at 6:55. And I will mute myself and we'll come back at the end of 6 minutes. We'll go 1 minute over. Well, it is 1 minute after the hour. Unless you're in Newfoundland, then it's 31 minutes after the hour. I love that how it's a half. It's so random. Time is playing with time like that. So, Trump, the one thing he could have done was end daylight savings time, for crying out loud, taking us off this time change, which makes me, the one thing he could have done, couldn't even do that. Mamma mia. That's our workshop for today. I'm going to stay on the line. If anyone would like to share, I'll open it up for that. I'd love any feedback that you have. You can send it by email to us, Veronica, and I would love to hear what you think. I'm always grateful that people are postcard poets because I think it's a transformational thing. It's a way to create community. And I can't believe I've done it for 19 years. I just told Lana I want to do something with postcards, and she said, I'll help. And here we are 19 years later doing this, and I get so much joy out of it. So thank you for being part of it. And I wish you good healing and good transformative energy in this time. I think the power of transformation at this time is very potent. So don't let them take away your joy. And exchanging postcards is a joyful act. So thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Paul, I have a funny thing. I was at AWP and I was in that sort of big central cafe place, and I saw this person with a white goatee and baseball cap. God, that person looks so familiar, but I cannot place him. I have no idea who it is. Then you walked by and I saw your name tag, but it was one of those moments where you're like totally overstimulated. And the first morning, I'm like, I didn't react fast enough to say, Paul Nelson, I'm a postcard poet. Hello. So it's really nice to be in this workshop and be able to say that.
Thanks, Rebecca. I hope to go to Baltimore for AWP, so maybe I'll see you there.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Jan?
Yeah, I'd love to share if that's okay.
Yeah, do you want to screen?
I don't know if anyone noticed, but I just want to start by saying that my husband had to go for an endoscopy today. We had to get up very early, and I'm in New York, and it's 10 o'clock now, and I was really tired. And I actually fell asleep while you were giving the instructions. I don't know if anyone noticed. So I had no idea what I was supposed to be doing. I just woke up now and I saw everyone was writing. And so I'd like to share what I wrote. and then I'd like you to tell me what we were supposed to be doing. So what I wrote is, I fell asleep during the instructions, but I'm doing the exercise anyway. Kind of how I drift through life from time to time, not knowing where I'm heading, but ending up exactly where I'm supposed to be. It's kind of nice not knowing what I'm supposed to be doing. I find I have no constraints at all. It's a type of freedom I really feel, and I like it. Who knew I'd be happy to have missed the cue and can still write out of the blue?
Rhyming couplet. Yeah, falling asleep during my lectures is a common experience, I'm told. I usually put a little bell.
I'd like to know what the exercise was supposed to be. I missed it.
Well, we have a tape. We'll have a tape of the thing. You can go back and do it again and do it right this time, for crying out loud. No, it was a grafting exercise. So to take a line of poetry from someone else or from yourself and to write what that inspiration, where it leads you in this particular moment.
Thank you. And I apologize for
No apologies necessary. If you get something that good out of it, then it was a success, right? And you'll never forget it, the experience.
Right.
The Postcard Fest started out of the 315 experiment, where people, including Bernadette Mayer and Danica Dinsmore, would wake up in Boulder, Colorado every day at 3:15 a.m. and attempt to write from a hypnopompic or hypnagogic state. the state of just before going to sleep or the state just after waking. So that would qualify as a proto postcard poem. Thanks, Jim.
I'd be happy to read mine.
Go ahead.
I took a line from one of those poems that was in the Hamel. How thin, how wretchedly thin you have grown. You've been deprived of most delicious sin. You've become abstemious, or maybe just penurious. I offer you indulgence, sweet delight. The cream has risen to the top tonight. Please skim.
Isn't that something? And the grafting would take you a different place every time, depending on your blood pressure or the alignment of Jupiter or what you had for lunch that day. Okay, I think we have time for one more. Is someone sure?
Mine is short. A light to you and old. May the sun shine through the bitter clouds today. May it stay till your time has come to all that it should be.
Amen. Amen. That's a good place to end. So thank you for being here. Thank you for being Postcard Poets. I'm always available to you, pen@cascadiapoeticslab.org. And my phone number is available on the internet too. So I can tell that by all the scam calls I get. So feel free to reach out. I'm grateful that you're part of this community, grateful that you're ambassadors for this project. And yeah, we'll put this online. So if anyone of your friends missed it and wants to see what we did, it will be there if you want to go back. And I'm thinking of an artful way to cut out the 6 minutes of dead air. Being a radio guy for 26 years, I have to do that. I can't leave the 6 minutes in. So maybe a very gentle fade to black and something coming up. Maybe we put where Jan was napping in the middle part, and then kind of.
Thank you all. It was wonderful meeting you all. Thank you, Paul.
Thanks, East Coast people, for hanging out this late.
Thanks.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you much. Back to sleep for me.
All right.